All right, folks, welcome in. It is Selection Sunday night, and we are here on College Basketball Coast to Coast live after the field of 68 teams has been revealed by the NCAA Selection Committee. We now know who's in, who's out, where they're going, who they're playing. We don't have game times just yet. That'll come later tonight. Thank you for finding us on the platforms, on YouTube, on Twitter X, on the College Basketball Coast to Coast handle, as well as Facebook. If you're hearing the show later on podcast, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, or on the TuneIn streaming channel, thank you for finding us. This was a video show on Sunday night right after the selection show. I am merely the somewhat capable host, TJ Rives. I have been to Las Vegas and back with my wingman, Jason Powers, who is back aboard. You and I have spent like the last week together. We got to spend Selection Sunday night together. I think I saw you a few hours ago after we got back from Las Vegas and the Utah State win in the Mountain West Conference title game. Jason Powers, welcome, and we're ready to dive into everything going on, right?
How about 3:30 a.m. in the Las Vegas airport this morning in the TSA line?
It's tremendous. Whatever it takes. Thank God we did what we did when we did it to be able to get here. Back to Tampa Bay, where we are based, where we know the Florida Gators, by the way, are the 1 seed, and not surprisingly, they're coming to Tampa to play in the opening round. Duke, Arizona, Florida are the 1s. It turns out that Houston, Purdue, UConn, and Iowa State ended up being the 2 seeds. The last 4 teams in are Miami of Ohio, SMU, Texas, and NC State. As it turns out, they're playing in Dayton. We've got a lot to go over. Thank you for finding us. Share the show out, whether you're seeing it live, on demand, later on, video, audio. We love it. And we've got some great guests that are going to be coming on throughout the night. Later on in the program, Tyler Jones, who was at the Big 12 tournament win by Arizona over Houston on Saturday night in Kansas City, is here. Deshaun Tate, who patrols things out of Atlanta for the SEC, the ACC, and more. They will be joining us in a little bit. Later tonight, Ari Russell, who was at the Big East Championship win for St. John's, will be here on the program, as well as Matt Zimick, our Western Bureau Chief. We got all bases covered, Brother Powers, one more time to go into the field of 68. Hey, give me a quick opening thought or two now that you've seen the bracket. Just what do you want to say first as we get the show started and underway?
Good for the committee to send Mick Cronin from Chicago back to LA to Philadelphia with all his bitching and crying all year travel. Good for the committee. How about that?
They did not put him in Buffalo, but they did put him all the way back in the East Coast, as he's done nothing but complain all year about the schedule. Anything else that stands out? Interesting. And we're going to talk with Chris Daubertine in just a few moments from bloggingthebracket.com. Interesting on the first 4, Miami of Ohio is there. And the selection committee chair, Keith Gill, revealed on the CBS live exclusive show that they were not the final team in. Correct. In fact, he said they were in front of Texas, SMU, and NC State. Did that surprise you, Jason?
I mean, not real. I mean, again, I don't have a beef. I don't have a big complaint about them being in the. I felt they should have been in the bracket comfortably, and ultimately they were the fourth from the last team in. 4 teams got to play in Dayton, so I don't have a big beef about that. Interested that Purdue kind of really improved today by going to the 2 line by beating Michigan. I think that was one of the
what a 60 hours they had, and those 3 wins mattered. So the committee has received repeated criticism about talking about the results on Sunday can't be factored in. It factored in with Boiler Up, did it not, by beating Michigan today?
It did. St. John's, a little surprised they only got a 5 seed. I thought they might go to the 4 line. And how about Arkansas's plight? They win the SEC tournament on Sunday afternoon, have to then go to play in Portland on Thursday.
Yeah. What is up with sending them out there as the SEC champs on the 4 line? But you know what? They got to straighten all this out. You know who needs to straighten us out? From bloggingthebracket.com. Hello, Chris Daubertine, and welcome in on College Basketball Coast to Coast and our platforms. We bow to you. Tremendous work all throughout the year. I got Jason Powers hanging with me. We are both on minimal sleep. We are 3 time zones removed from being back and forth to Las Vegas. If I give out my social security number and my bank account, please stop me before somebody makes a crypto withdrawal or something happens. But nonetheless, we have the bracket. So good evening. And what are, same question to Jason, what are your opening thoughts on what we saw on that selection show a little while ago here on this Sunday night?
I had a few things that I would quibble about, but overall, I thought this was the best bracket that has been put out in years. And honestly, this was the best performance I've had in about 4 since 2022. So this was, I did a really good job kind of narrowing down where the teams were going to end up being. More so than I expected, and I really appreciated the transparency both during the bracket preview and during this show that Keith Gill shared as the committee chair.
Did it surprise you when he said that Miami of Ohio, let's go right there, questions about their strength of schedule, questions about they didn't even play a top 50 team, much less beat one, that he basically said they not only weren't 37th, they weren't 36th at large or 35th at large. They were even better.
Yeah, well, there are 2 steps to the process. First, they vote teams in, and that's why Miami wasn't the last team in. They were voted in before SMU, in before Texas, in before NC State. But then once you have your field set, you go and you look at the metrics and you look at the profiles and you look at the selection sheets, and that's where they got hurt. And the fact that their results-based metrics got them in. The wins above bubble in particular, that's what got them in. But their metrics, when they actually went and scrubbed the field and seeded everybody, that's where they got hurt.
Jason, you got a question for Chris? Go ahead.
No, again, were you surprised? Again, I think they did Florida a little bit of an injustice by putting Houston in Houston. Your thoughts there?
I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen because what the question was, where was UConn going to be? Because if UConn was going to be 5th overall, they could not go to the East and be paired with Duke because you can't pair the number 1 overall seed with the top number 2 seed. So once they decided that Houston was going to be number 1, 2 seed, that made things all very simple. I kind of figured that was going to happen earlier this week, and then it definitely became clear last night.
Well, Chris,
right, Florida though. I mean, that's a little bit. I mean, that you put Florida in a tough spot there.
Oh yeah, and I don't like as a Florida alum, I do not like the draw at all because there's a potential of playing Vanderbilt again in the Sweet 16. Which again, that was a matchup that they just were not completely prepared for at all yesterday. But yeah, and that Houston is going to be up for that game if it happens, if they get there. The opportunity to knock Florida out, from repeating, after losing to them in the final last year not on their home floor, but, in their backyard.
Yeah.
Love Chris Daubertine's insight, bloggingthebracket.com. He's done a great job all throughout this process from January on. He's repeatedly taken my text message, my email, my call to come on and on and on. Let's go down again to the bottom of the bracket for your last 4 in. I know on your final Sunday bracket reveal that you ended up having at the bottom of the bracket Santa Clara, Missouri, SMU, and Texas. Santa Clara was in.
Well,
I'm just double checking. Go ahead.
I switched Texas out with Oklahoma during my final prediction because I was like, well, Oklahoma did finish the season a lot better than Texas did. Maybe they'll take that into account. They lost a close game to Arkansas in the SEC tournament when Texas,
right,
should have beaten Ole Miss, didn't beat Ole Miss. And that's what cost me was I should have stuck with my first instinct.
I understand. Interesting, though, that Santa Clara was all the way in, safe as a 10 seed. Did that surprise you out of the West Coast Conference when they had already taken Gonzaga and St. Mary's?
I was a little surprised just because, traditionally the committee has not treated mid-majors, especially third teams from conferences like the WCC or the A10 or even the Mountain West in some years. They have not treated them fairly. So I was very surprised to see them that high.
Again, Chris with us for a few more moments. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah.
Which of the 4 regions in your mind is the strongest as far as heavyweight teams? I know CBS put a weighted graphic on that. They thought the East was a little bit stronger based on the weighted numbers and all that. In your view, did they get that right, or what would?
Yeah, I think they absolutely did get it right. Because that East region, you have Duke, you have UConn, the regionals in DC, which probably helps Duke a little bit more than it would be if we're in Brooklyn or MSG, where it would definitely help UConn out.
You got St.
But
John's.
Yep, St. John's, who was underseeded in my opinion. I thought they should have been a 4 seed. You could have St. John's and UConn potentially in the Elite Eight. Another thing you could also have in that region is the war on I-4. But I don't think that's going to happen because, because both Michigan State and UConn are on that side of the bracket. And I think that, I think USF is probably going to end up beating Louisville. I've not been impressed by Louisville at all. But I honestly think that that's the toughest region just because you have Michigan State and you have UConn, two teams that, Michigan State in particular, I think is very dangerous. I think that they were kind of hanging around that 2 line until Purdue started to make their run. And they, I think, are going to they are the strongest 2-3 seed. So I think that's the team that I would kind of keep an eye on there. That regional is going to be fire.
We will adhere to the fact that I said to Chris, I'm only going to keep you for a few minutes tonight from bloggingthebracket.com. He's also updating his own site through the SB Nation family of sites. Interesting in that East Regional, I say this every year, Chris, when we talk about what the committee does and doesn't do. Stop telling us that you don't look at matchups, you don't look at brackets. It's no coincidence that you have Duke in the same bracket in Philadelphia, not playing St. John's in Philadelphia, but St. John's is in the bracket to be in the Sweet 16, and it's 34 years removed from the epic Duke-Kentucky game with Krzyzewski against Pitino and the Christian Laettner shot. They're just coincidentally in a weekend matchup next weekend if they both get there. But they don't look at these things. Also fascinating that back to USF, South Florida, in the tournament for the first time since 2012. Full disclosure, the 3 of us all have ties to the Tampa Bay area. So we know this. Jason and I are in the Bay Area. Chris is now in Chicago. USF only in the tournament one previous time in this century, 2012. Only 4 times ever. Previous conference tournament automatic bid, Chris, is 1990. Parachute pants, like 75 cents a gallon gas. What else that was going on back at Bruce Willis and Die Hard? What else was going on back in 1990? That's the last automatic bid when they were the Sun Belt tournament champs.
They've gone Sun Belt, Metro, Conference USA,
and Big East,
supersized Big East, and now the American.
And now the American. And interesting, they were in the Metro with Louisville. They were in Conference USA with Louisville. They were in the Big East with Louisville, and briefly for a year or two in the American with Louisville before they went to the ACC. And that's the first round matchup. So there's a bit of a storyline there with that. Anything else that we have left out? Possible upsets? Somebody got underseeded or overseeded? Anything else, Chris?
I got to the point where the 4th region, the West, was coming up, and I saw that I had Illinois, Vandy, and Nebraska, and I'm like, one of these teams is going to get majorly screwed in terms of seeding, and that ended up being Vandy. The good thing for that, they're in the same pot as Nebraska, so they can take care of that, themselves. But I thought that was a little bit strange, especially with all the talk about, the weekend games being important suddenly. I thought there was a little inconsistency there. That would kind of be my biggest complaint. But honestly, I think the one region that I would keep an eye out for in terms of upsets, I was kind of looking through the Midwest, and I'm like, Georgia, St. Louis, Texas Tech, Akron, Miami, if they get out of SMU, getting Tennessee potentially, Kentucky, Santa Clara. I think that Midwest region could end up just being a complete, it's going to be a mess. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of upsets happen just because there's some really fascinating matchups there.
Jason, do you have one final thing for Chris before we let him depart?
I was going to say, give me a 5 or 6 seed or below team that you think could make a Final 8 kind of run. I look at Tennessee. They got a pretty decent draw. I even look at BYU. They're in a bracket with not a lot of defensive teams. They can score the ball, and they got arguably the best player in the country who can score 35 on a given night.
Akron is a team that I would keep an eye on because that's a very guard-heavy section of the bracket that they could maybe get and make a run. Like I said, I think Vanderbilt, again, that scares me, the potential of having to play Vanderbilt again. And the other team that I would kind of keep an eye on is I think South Florida could potentially do something because they play a very different style that I don't think Michigan State is necessarily going to be ready to prepare for on that, quick 48-hour turnaround.
Powers, you are aware of Rick Barnes' March record. I know he had an elite 8 a couple of years ago. But by and large, Rick Barnes in March, like the last 15 years, has been a mess, and they got beat right away by Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament. We could debate this for a lot longer. Chris, thank you. You're gracious with your time. Bloggingthebracket.com.
Great job.
This is like Christmas morning. The presents are open here for all of us, including Chris, to find out what we did, and you did a great job with all of this stuff. Thank you for hanging with us on College Basketball Coast to Coast.
Thank you for putting up with me.
Love it. Have a great night. We'll be back in touch. Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. Bye.
We will rock on here on this Sunday night. Any thoughts to what he had to say there in the follow-up?
Yeah, you mentioned South Florida. They're in Buffalo. Brian Hott's the moment if they get eliminated, he'll have a short commute to Syracuse to sign the contract.
It certainly looks like he could have his choice of having the Syracuse job soon, and they do go to Buffalo for that opening round game. A couple of other intriguing games. I thought maybe BYU a little overvalued as a 6 seed. That could be dangerous against Texas Tech, against Texas or NC State in that matchup. Again, they'll play a first 4 game on Tuesday night. NC State, though, is damaged at the end of the year. They've lost a bunch of games. I don't know how good they are. Watch out for VCU, speaking of damaged, against a damaged North Carolina team in the 11-6 game. A 12-5 game might be Akron against Texas Tech. Injured JT Toppin in that game. Akron playing very well at the end of the year. What do you think of that?
I don't know enough about Akron, but I mean, obviously, I know they were Miami of Ohio's biggest foe in the MAC. And again, without Toppin, Christian Anderson, the other really good player for Texas Tech, injury status up in the air a little bit of what his circumstance is. A lot of people are talking about UCLA could be dangerous if Dent and Bilodeau are back. They play,
but we don't know. We don't know how healthy they are for the UCLA opening round matchup with UCF. Bilodeau's injury is a slight knee injury. Donovan Dent suffered a calf strain and did not play in the second half of the loss to Purdue on Saturday. And they've got to play right away here against a tough UCF team. I don't know how far they can go, especially coming all the way east to Philadelphia, like you said.
Right. And then you got a potential second round matchup, St. John's, Kansas, which could be probably the highlight of the second round as far as brand names. I think that's your biggest marquee second round matchup. But yeah, I mean, good. Again, we saw Utah State. They've got a decent draw against Villanova. That's a winnable game. We saw them. Arkansas, tough draw. A team you like a lot, Hawaii, could face Arkansas. Have to travel to Portland, quick turnaround for Arkansas and Calipari. Everybody will be all over Arkansas with what they did in the SEC, and I know you like Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii's got a couple of bigs. Isaac Johnson, the transfer from Utah State. They've got another Australian player that's a 6'9" athletic player and a couple of guards, but that's a tough matchup for them. The only thing is the travel. I'm positive Hawaii obviously stayed in California and in Las Vegas after they won the Big West tournament, stayed in Las Vegas, I should say, and will go directly to Portland. That's an easier trip for them to get to Portland than Arkansas after winning in Nashville on Sunday in the SEC championship game. It is college basketball coast to coast. We're doing this live on Sunday night, Selection Sunday Night Show. Let's bring in Tyler Jones. Love Mr. Jones from the Big 12 country and the Big 12 footprint. He's with us here.
And the SEC. Don't forget that,
too. And the SEC, absolutely, for both. He covered the Big 12 championship game win by Arizona over Houston. Last night, Powers and I were in Vegas. We were in Kansas City. We are coast to coast. Great to have you here on the program. Yes. First, can we back up a step? Arizona, Iowa State. I don't know that there's going to be a game in this NCAA tournament for a while that was better than that game on Friday night. You were there in the building. It helps Arizona advance to the final and go ahead and win the tournament. But how great was that finish? The final 5 minutes of all the made shots, and then eventually Jaden Bradley with the game winner for Arizona. Tyler, your thoughts on that epic game in the semifinal?
So I'll be honest. On Friday, I had a wedding to attend in Kansas City, about 5 minutes away from the arena, and I made it to the Kansas-Houston game. The wedding was going on. during the best game of the entire tournament between Arizona and Iowa State.
So what were you like? Were you like over in the corner while the nuptials are going on, doing this with the phone and then doing this, trying not to yell out as the last shots were going in?
No, I was score watching. I did not get to watch in real time. I saw the highlight later. But yes, I was very upset with the groom for scheduling his wedding to go on during the middle of the Big 12 tournament semifinals.
Still an amazing finish to that game. I believe the last, Jason, what did we say? The last 5 possessions were all makes. Make. And then Bradley hits the game winner with no time left. Tyler, it was incredible.
It was. And something to monitor with Jaden Bradley, the hand. I interviewed him yesterday. I believe we have that interview that
we do
here coming up.
We'll go to it coming up. Yes.
But he had it taped up, was held to 13 points, still played very well yesterday. But Arizona's my pick to win the national championship. That's the only thing that I wonder is that hand with Jaden. Is it going to potentially hold them back? If he's okay, if he's fine, nobody's stopping this Arizona team. They're a complete basketball team. They got depth. They got guys that can score from everywhere. Tommy Lloyd's done a fantastic job with that Arizona team, and I think they're going to be tough to stop. They went through the toughest conference in the country. They had one of the most impressive starts to a season that we've ever seen before. And even when they went through that tough stretch in the back end of Big 12 play, they still only came out with 2 losses. I was very impressed with the Wildcats.
Love Tyler's insight. All right, so give me to the championship game atmosphere with the matchup in Houston. Second year in a row, it's Arizona and Houston in the Big 12. Not exactly traditional teams, both newer members, but what about the atmosphere real quick?
So I know that Tommy Lloyd would like the Big 12 tournament to be played in Vegas. That is not happening, Tommy. Never should it leave Kansas City ever. Get that out of your brain. Get that out of your head. Don't ever say those words ever again. The Big 12 tournament in Kansas City is the best conference tournament in the country for a reason, and Kansas City is a big reason why. Even with the closest team in this game, Houston, being 700 miles away, it was still a very good atmosphere. Not every seat was full. They sold out every ticket because of the Kansas and Iowa State fans that thought they were going to be there, and they did not end up reselling all the seats. But there was probably at least 10,000 people in the building. It felt like an Arizona home game. They probably outnumbered Houston fans 3-1. But I was in awe. I enjoyed the entire week there. I have been traveling for NASCAR the last few weeks in Daytona, Phoenix, Austin, and I was not used to the cold of Kansas City. I've had a nice tan from being out on the road the last few weeks, but nonetheless, Kansas City impressed, and it was a great time there. And Arizona, I was taken aback by just the way that they performed. That's a really good basketball team.
While we are here, let's go ahead and get your interview in with Jaden Bradley, who hit that game winner against Iowa State, ended up being the MOP, the most outstanding player of the tournament for the Big 12 title game. Tyler talked to him post-game. This is why we love the coverage on college basketball coast to coast. Here we go with that
championship belt. With
got the belt. Here we go. Watch this. Watch it, college basketball coast to coast audience. If you're only hearing us, Jaden Bradley doing the interview with the WWE style belt after they cut the nets down. Here you go.
Tournament title.
Man, it's crazy. It's a crazy feeling.
The Arizona Wildcats are champions of the Big 12 Conference. Jaden, how does it feel to bring home a tournament title?
Man, it's crazy. It's a crazy feeling. I want to thank God, my family, everybody that came out and supported us. I'm just proud of the guys.
Winning tournament MVP in how tough this conference is and the grind you guys went through this week in this tournament, what does it mean to you?
Man, it was a tough week. Late nights, going over scouting reports, trying to figure out who you're going to play. Houston's a great team defensively. Then they went on like a 16-0 run. But, we fought back and, figured it out, put it away.
How well do you guys believe you are prepared for the NCAA tournament after what you went through this week?
We're going to go back Selection Sunday, see who we play, where we at. Get the beginner's mindset back up and, get ready to play them.
What's your confidence level at right now?
Man, a 10, just proud of the guys. And I can't wait to, go through this journey. It's going to be my last time playing with each other, and everybody going to go their separate ways. But, we're going to enjoy this time with each other.
So you got the WWE title belt now. Where's this going to go?
I'm going to give it to my mom and, do what she want to do with it.
Congrats again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Love that. Great job, Tyler, there with that. Hey, shall we add a fourth to our quartet? It's a foursome. Let's do that with Deshaun Tate, Mr. Tate's Take from Atlanta, to give us some more insight. Good evening. Welcome to the Selection Sunday night special edition of College Basketball Coast to Coast, as we do this live on video.
He'd go to jail for us.
In the after, yes, absolutely. Or he would provide the bail money, one of the two, for us. Great to have you here with us. Hey, while we're on the subject, Deshaun, start us right there. How impressive was Arizona as they secured, as it turns out now, the committee's revealed it, the number 2 overall seed by winning the Big 12? Give me a quick take on that, Mr. Tate's Take.
Yeah, definitely not providing the bail money. That's all going to Breslin at this point. So I'd go to jail for you before anything. No, just talking about Arizona. That's what you said, right? Arizona.
Yes.
I mean, Arizona's just been so strong all year long. I mean, from the beginning of the season, when some of the teams didn't live up to the hype and some of the expectations and whatever, what have you. One of them is a current number 1 seed, talking about Florida. That was one of the biggest games before we even knew what kind of team Arizona was going to be, with Koa Pete having over 30 points against that defending national champion Florida team, top 3 rank and all that other stuff. And they just didn't really seem like they missed a beat all season. It feels like we waited forever just for them to be able to lose a game. Obviously, them and Miami were the last ones unbeaten, but I mean, the toughest conference in the country, obviously, or I don't know about toughest, but I think it is the best conference in the country. And the games that they had to win in order to prove that, winning the conference and the conference tournament. I mean, in the best conference, you got to automatically consider them to be, a national championship contender now. They've had some good teams, some really good teams in the past that didn't, quite get to the point where you met up with the other 3 that were all deserving of getting there either. So sometimes that kind of concerns me. Obviously, you're talking about the hand from Bradley. They rely a lot on their freshmen. Not a lot of teams that win national championships kind of predicate their success on freshmen and win national championships. The last one, I think, was Duke in 15. So, I mean, other than that, Tommy Lloyd continuing to show exactly why he is, one of the best up-and-coming head coaches in the game, and just 2 years only removed from National Coach of the Year or something like that. Caleb Hope coming in next year, showing he's also a good recruiter. Things that you have to have if you want to consider yourself among some of the best programs in the country.
Let's mix it up here. We just got Deshaun in here, but I want this from him and then from you, Tyler. What did the committee get right on the reveal tonight? What did they get wrong? Deshaun, give me something. Maybe you don't think they got anything right, or maybe you thought they didn't get very much wrong. Do you have something that you thought they got right on the bracket, on the seeds, on the 1s, on the 2s, on the last 4 in? Something that strikes you?
I'm usually a guy that, always feels like that they got it right, because if there's someone on the outside looking in, usually it's Seth Greenberg up on the tube every year. But,
Yes.
for whatever reason, I'm just one that lives on the side of the fence that you didn't do enough to get in. You can make a case for this or that, but if you're not amongst the best 6, if you're right there on the outside looking in, I think it's clear that you didn't do enough. Now, I was asked very early on in the season, coming in before any games were played, which was the team that I thought, was going to surprise some people, as we start approaching March. Well, that same team now has in the teens for losses. They're going to, be playing in Dayton. And that's the NC State Wolfpack. I thought that they had the team to do it. They have the bench to do it. They have the talent to do it. Obviously, a coach that's pretty freaking good as well. A little comical, but pretty good. And I'm a little surprised that they got in. I think over the course of the last 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, they've lost about 3 games by 30 plus. That's not the resume, that's not the resume of a team that's preparing itself to, be a part of March Madness.
They lost 7 of their last 9 games, 4 straight to end the regular season, won an opening game in Charlotte, but then lost to Virginia, lost 7 of their last 9 games. So they clearly were floundering.
It's hard to vouch for the committee on that.
They're going to play Texas, who's floundering too, the same way in the first 4 in Dayton. So that's
2 teams that played each other on the Maui Invitational too.
And they did play each other. Tyler Jones, pick it up on that. Did the committee get it right that those 2 teams got 2 of the last spots, Texas and NC State? I know you delve into the SEC as well as the Big 12.
I don't mind Texas and NC State being in. My problem is Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio, you didn't play anybody all year. You played a cupcake schedule. and you have no quality wins to show for it. You barely beat a bunch of lousy teams all season long. You couldn't even win your conference tournament in such a bad league. Miami of Ohio has no business being in this tournament. But on the flip side, though.
Well, how about this? Can I stop you right there?
Finish real quick.
Can I stop you on this? Not only in, but as Keith Gill revealed for those of us, for those that are just joining us, they were not even the 37th dead last team. The committee, and Keith said this, Keith Gill, Commissioner Gill of the Sun Belt Conference, they had them in as the 34th team. 35, 36, and 37 was SMU, Texas, and NC State. Does that surprise you, Tyler?
Yes, it does. And it feels like, to kind of put it to a football comparison, how many times have we talked about in college football the last few years of teams avoiding playing tough non-conference opponents and benefiting from an easy conference schedule and basically scheduling their way into the college football playoff?
Right.
That is exactly what Miami of Ohio did. They scheduled their way into the tournament, beating a bunch of lousy teams. On Oklahoma's end of things being left out, though, I will say I don't feel bad for Oklahoma or anybody that got left out either, because this bubble was terrible. Auburn was not a good basketball team. And Oklahoma, you lost 9 straight conference games at one point. And if you beat Arkansas, we're not even having this discussion. Oklahoma would be in the tournament. So Oklahoma's got no one to blame but themselves for missing out on all this. So the committee, I don't like Miami of Ohio being in there, but honestly, there's not really a better option either. There's not a team that's just obviously, sitting at home that shouldn't be.
I didn't mean to stifle you. You said on the flip side, after you were starting to say Miami of Ohio, do you remember where you were going next? Were you going to give the committee maybe credit for something that they did do well, even if it's begrudgingly?
Right,
yeah.
I know. TJ, I know where he was going. Where he was going is that he felt like Miami had to be a team that went completely unbeaten to go into Selection Sunday. They could have lost in the conference tournament championship game by a half a point on a buzzer beater, and if they didn't win and go all the way through unscathed, then he, like most people, would feel like they didn't deserve to be in. They didn't lose any games. They had 1 loss on the entire season. I don't know whatever their strength of schedule is. Let's just say I think I heard 361.
331, yes, out of 336.
331. So from 332 all the way to 360, however many odd teams that there is, and I'm sure had really terrible scheduling too. If they had what kept them from going unbeaten and being in this same conversation? You play the teams that are in front of you. You beat the teams that are in front of you. They have 1 loss. If you're not telling me that a team with 1 loss doesn't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, I think it's crazy, because they didn't blow teams out. Sure enough, a lot of games maybe by 1 point, 1 possession, close games, overtime, you name it. But they found a way to add a number to the left side of the result column. It's ludicrous, Tyler. I'm not going to jail for you anymore.
Well, I think we may have lost Deshaun.
He got so fired up, he lost his
connection. We got too fired up. We'll see if we can get him back. Go ahead, Tyler. Respond to that.
Don't even match up for Miami of Ohio. They finished 93rd in Ken Palm. So, if to me,
the net ranking had them 74, by the way, the NCAA's net ranking. They took a 74 team in the net. It's only the second time since the net ranking came out they took a team 70 or below.
If the metrics were there, then I could understand. But there's no resume wins whatsoever, and the metrics don't match either. This is a team that got lucky, and then when they finally got put to the test, they failed.
And one more, I'm just going to pile on Deshaun Tate. What you've done is you have green lighted. Jason, you can get in on this too. They've green lighted everybody else at the mid-major level. Do your best to not play anybody at all. Don't play anybody at all. And as long as you stack up the wins, then you're going to get in, and that's a bad precedent.
Deshaun Tate says it's hard to do it 31 straight times. I don't care if you're playing anybody.
It's not hard to do if you're playing the 4th worst schedule. Deshaun, there's only 5th worst schedule. There's only 336 teams. Yes. Because obviously in this situation, you have a unique one where they were pretty good. And when you play the fourth worst schedule you could possibly play, a pretty good team can take advantage of all of those games. Do we honestly believe that anybody in the top 50 couldn't have won all of those games that Miami of Ohio won? Who are we kidding?
Why are we putting NC State in, who's lost 7 of 9?
Right, but they were playing tougher teams. Put it to you this way. I have already seen this from several different handicappers that were putting this out. Miami of Ohio is like already a 9-point underdog in the game with SMU, who barely got in. And a couple of people put out it wouldn't have mattered if it was Texas or NC State. They were going to be an 8 or 9 point underdog for what it's worth.
Take Miami in the 9.
I'll tell you what else you can do, TJ. You can go completely winless throughout the entire regular season, get to the conference tournament, and go on 5 or 6 games, however many it is, and get the automatic bid. It's crazy. You do this 31 times. I think that says something. Not 1 time, not 11 times, not 21 times, 31 times. I think that says something. They're finding a way to win games. Of course, you put them in, or put them in. Do what you just did. You put them in the play-in. You make them. But guess what they're going to say? You go, who is SMU? Who is SMU? It's just going to be another excuse.
SMU beat
the solution to all this,
like 5 teams that are in the tournament field. Go ahead.
The solution to all this, we need to stop giving the automatic bid to conference tournament champions. That needs to go to the regular season championship. The regular season is harder to win. It means more. You'd rather be a regular season champion than you would be a conference tournament champion. If we did that, that would solve a lot of these issues.
But TV and the money rules that. We know that. Tyler, we got to scoot. Thank you for your comments. Keep up the great stuff on the Jones Report. The Oklahoma Sooners roundtable on that website, the Sooners left out Porter Moser being kept apparently by Oklahoma. Yes. Tyler, a quick thought on how big a mistake that is. Is it a mistake?
I think it is a mistake. 4 years he has missed the tournament out of his 5 years in Norman. And if you want to argue about NIL budgets, Kelvin Sampson would be the first to tell you, Houston, they're broke. And look what they're doing. And Oklahoma can't even make the NCAA tournament. This is a proud program. Outside of Gonzaga, OU is the best program in college basketball to never win a national title. They won with Billy Tubbs, Kelvin Sampson, Lon Kruger. Why can't Porter Moser win? I don't understand it. I think they should have pushed him out the door to go take another job and avoid paying his buyout of firing him and started over. They got a new arena coming here in the next couple of years. They need to get this program right to compete in the SEC, and I don't expect results to be any different, even with putting more NIL resources into that program next year.
Interesting. He got the vote of confidence. Mr. Jones, thank you. The Jones Report will be out later this week previewing the tournaments. You'll be in Oklahoma City as well this weekend for college basketball coast to coast. Excellent hustle at the Big 12. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Great stuff for him. We appreciate his time. Deshaun, I'm going to keep you for a few more moments. Say something about Duke. The number 1 overall seed beat Virginia in the conference tournament championship game in Charlotte. Say something about Duke securing the overall number 1 seed. As it turns out, I think Deshaun just departed again, just as I teed that up, Jason Powers. Why don't you say something about Duke securing the number 1 overall seed win, and we'll wait for Deshaun to answer.
Yeah, my question with Duke is, are they vulnerable without the two starters, Foster and Ngangba? Florida State had a chance to beat them in the quarterfinals, a game that I thought Florida State had a chance to win. Caden Boozer, the brother, is having to play a lot more point guard than he has before. They beat Clemson in the semifinals, struggled. Again, Virginia's a good team, but that game went right down to the wire. They were down in that game for much of that game. So I worry about Duke when a potential St. John's Sweet 16 matchup if they don't have Foster and Ngangba. That would be my concern when they would Duke.
I don't know that we're going to get Deshaun back. We thank him for being here. He got some thoughts in. Mr. Tate's Take Hoops. Follow him on social media.
Virginia, a 3 seed. A little too rich for you?
Interesting that they did give them that high of a seed. They won some key games down the stretch of the season. So got into the ACC.
If you look at their resume, they haven't beaten. They've got 1 or 2 good wins on the whole year. They've beaten a lot of the bottom feeders of the ACC.
All right, let's get a couple of other guys in here on the mix on this live selection Sunday night show. Hello to Ari Russell from New York City here with us. I believe Ari is good to go. He might, I mean, we're having technology, I guess. We'll see if he can hang in. Matt Zimick, the Western Bureau Chief, is here. I see moving pictures with him on the live show as we do this live here on the program. Welcome. Good to have you. Give me a thought or two at the onset here about what you thought of the Field of 68 as it was revealed earlier this evening on CBS by the NCAA Selection Committee.
You know, we do this every year, guys, and thanks again for having me, of course. Fewer selection controversies, fewer seeding and bracketing controversies. Like, comparatively, this was a lower controversy year. I think Vanderbilt as a 5 seed was the worst seeding decision by the committee, but you know, sometimes I've seen seeds be like 2 or 3 seed lines off. Didn't see that. Like, there are a lot of seeds you could go, you know, should have been 1 seed off, but no 2 seed mistakes. So relatively solid there. You know, it's good that Miami of Ohio got in. We say this, right? Winning college basketball games, especially on the road in conference, is hard. Like, it's just hard to do that, no matter, even if the conference is a tomato can. So I'm firmly in Deshaun's corner on this one. You win 31 out of 31, you know, that should mean something. It's a completely different conversation if Miami was 29-3 and had 3 losses against that schedule. But one loss. You did.
I rebut again that you're green lighting all of the mid majors, especially. Do not play anybody. Look what happens if you don't play anybody and you just win all the games against teams that largely are inferior.
So go ahead and win them all. Like,
well, right. I mean, that is the task.
Or even if you lose 2. No, right. But you tripped up 1 time over 4.5 months, you deserve at least your shot. And I would say this. The first 4 is perfect for Miami of Ohio. You do this with that kind of team. A lot of people think Miami should have been safely into the round of 64. No, the first 4 is exactly where you put a team like Miami of Ohio. Prove you can beat SMU in that kind of game.
Let me add my man, Ari Russell. I believe we've got him here. Good evening, my friend from New York City.
Yeah.
Same subject. What did the committee get right or what did they get wrong as we're doing this right after the selection show live on the Sunday night?
Yeah, they didn't get too much wrong, in my opinion. I agree with Matt. I said, like, the biggest folly was probably the Vanderbilt seating. I think that's, clearly off, but that's only off by like 1. 1 point. Everything else, I think they got right. I think they actually had an easier time probably building this bracket out than they had prior. In previous years. I think the Miami, Ohio, that's great. This exactly what the play-in game is for, is to see if they can knock off a team. SMU was on the bubble mainly because they were really high up. I mean, they were kind of locked in like beginning of February, and then they fell off because they had some injuries, but didn't really close out the season. Neither did NC State, neither did Texas. Right. But all the other bubble teams were even worse than who I just mentioned. My biggest beef right now is the personal one, which it isn't that much of a beef, but it's kind of ridiculous that Miami has to go play Missouri in St. Louis. That's a road game for them, and they're the higher seed, so that's a little ridiculous. But I mean, there's a lot of moving parts for the committee to be able to do, and
right.
I can understand that. I feel that they could probably put them in another pod perhaps, but that's how it falls. And you want to advance in the tournament, you got to beat whomever it is that you're playing, and wherever the heck you got to play them. So that's what this tournament is about. Most teams have to travel, and Arkansas has got to probably getting the most frequent flyer miles out of this tournament if they are to advance. I'm sure that doesn't make Cal happy, but if your team is good, they're going to be good whether they're playing close to home or you're flying 2,500, 3,000 miles from where you are. So, I think they did a pretty good job of setting up this bracket. I think the East is clearly is probably the toughest bracket for Duke at this point. A lot of real tough, interesting matchups there. But I think they did a pretty good job this year, and there's not too much controversy for us to complain about. For what usually the first couple of days before we get to Tuesday, actually to Thursday, it's always about the bubble teams. This team got snubbed. No one really got snubbed this year. There's really not much red meat for us to chew on here.
Yeah, the bubble was so bad, Ari, down at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's true.
You talk about expanding the tournament? What are you, nuts? You could track the tournament after a year like this.
After this. Jason, you haven't gotten in here in a while. You've been looking over the bracket. Anything else that has struck you about a team that got shipped out? We talked about how Arkansas getting shipped to Portland after winning the SEC tournament and having to play right away Thursday. I was
very surprised the team Ari covers. St. John's gets shipped to San Diego. I mean, they win the Big East, they're conference champion. They dismantle UConn last night on national TV. Was a little surprised they get shipped. That's not a great. I mean, again, the draw, not a great draw either with Kansas in round 2, but a little surprised.
Yeah, and St. John's stayed a 5 seed. St. John's wasn't bumped up to a 4. Where's the value of what it did? Yes.
Well, I'll tell you the reason why is because of their non-conference schedule. They didn't do well at all in non-conference, and they kind of are looking at how they are seeding the Big East and how the committee viewed the Big East as primarily a weak conference. Sure, UConn didn't win the conference tournament, nor did they win the regular season. But if you look at their body of work in the non-conference schedule, it is pretty remarkable. So they earned their way to the 2 seed. We're close to possibly being a 1 seed. If they may have won on Saturday night, they would have been in the conversation for that last 1 spot as well with Houston, but they didn't do that either. So they landed on the 2 spot. But it does show you what with Villanova being an 8 seed as well, or a 9. I always get them mixed up.
8. They're an 8.
They're an 8.
Villanova's an 8. Yes.
Yeah. So the Big East wasn't valued, and nor should it have been. I mean, I mentioned this on Twitter, and I said it to people in Madison Square Garden. Most people agreed that the distance between St. John's and UConn and the rest of the conference, it was vast. As far as the talent and the quality,
it was
of those 2 teams.
It was like being in the Garden or being in the Bronx. The distance between the two, it's a long way away.
Well, it's not that far. You can probably get to the Bronx from there without train delays in like 25, 30 minutes. It isn't that bad. Depends where you're going.
All right, a couple of more because you were in that building. How electric for the Big East win by St. John's, and it's the first time ever that a team has won the regular season title and the tournament championship in back-to-back years, as St. John's did. You were there on Saturday night for the Johnnies in New York City.
It was so loud. It was wonderful. But St. John's, the St. John's play pretty much quieted the loud UConn crowd. Now, in that second half, they made a small surge there to get it within 7, and that's when the UConn crowd got excited, but then got quieted pretty quickly down the stretch after a timeout by Patino, which really put the momentum back in St. John's direction. But the arena was still loud because, hey, that is the home court for St. John's. Obviously, they had the advantage from the crowd standpoint, but UConn was what had their presence felt as well. And the energy between both fan bases was electric. I mean, sold out crowd over 19,000 there at the Garden.
It was rocking. And Matt, I promise I'm going to circle back to you, but Ari got a conversation in after the game in the locker room with Dylan Darling, the guard for St. John's, about winning the game. I love this interview when these players either have the championship belt, or you're going to see this with Darling here in this instance, that he's got a piece of the net on the hat. So let's go to that conversation post-game for the St. John's Big East tournament win as Ari Russell talked with the St. John's guard.
On this win, man. I mean, this is kind of what you signed up for, didn't you, when you got here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's talk about the preparation for this game. How much did that blowout against UConn on the road a few weeks ago play into the intensity that you guys came into it today?
You know, I just feel like, we've been kind of setting the tone all tournament of how we need to start games. And, we came out with great energy, great attention to detail. And, that's something that coach has been emphasizing and, we want to keep building on.
For sure. There was a little stretch there in the second half that, as far as the momentum, it looked like UConn was getting a little bit of momentum there. and you actually stepped up in that role and scored a few points, got a couple of free throws as well. Just talk about kind of your mentality in that. A couple of steals I think you got in there as well that really flipped the switch and put the game away. Just talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, it's a game of runs, and we knew they were going to have their run. They're too good not to, and we just try to stay level-headed, stay together, and for me, just try to win, and no other thought process besides just trying to make winning plays, and that's just kind of the way it played out tonight.
For sure. And finally, what is the expectation as a group here moving forward? I mean, obviously, winning a Big East championship is a huge deal, but just talk a little bit about the goals of this team moving forward.
Yeah, we just want to take it one game at a time. That's all you can do. Only one game is promised from here on out. And really just, start tomorrow, start preparing for whoever we're going to play and, really focusing in on them and just taking it one game at a time.
No doubt. Well, congratulations tonight. Enjoy it. And good luck in the future champ.
Thank you.
They are the champs. I'm going to get Ari back in here as well with Matt Zimick. We're doing this live here on the Selection Sunday Night Show. Just one more follow-up point. He's kind of a feisty little guard. Ejiofor, though, is a tremendous player. Again, we talked about the draw for St. John's and the fact that they are in the bracket with Kansas and with Duke at the top of the bracket. Ari, Ejiofor, the type of player that can help carry St. John's. Remember, they didn't even get out of the second round last year. Arkansas beat them in the second round last year. They thought projecting ahead on how far St. John's can maybe go.
Absolutely. He's a problem on both ends of the court. There really isn't anyone in the country that I think can really check him, one man to man. And as long as he doesn't get in foul trouble, that's a problem. Plus, he's also, if they do get, past Northern Iowa in the first round, obviously Kansas beats California Baptist, then they play each other in the second round there. Zuby Ejiofor is a transfer from Kansas, if I'm not mistaken. So there's kind of that intrigue there where he gets to showcase his skill to his former coach and maybe say, hey, you missed out on me at this point. And now he's one of the most decorated players in the history of St. John's at this point, coming from Kansas, where he wasn't able to get as much playing time. Well, we saw Rick Pitino was able to develop this young man, and he's a problem. And in fact, if they are able to get past Kansas, I actually think that St. John's presents a huge matchup problem for Duke because of Ejiofor. And if there's anybody in the country that can slow down a Cam Boozer, it's Zuby Ejiofor, and he's going to present a lot of problems for Boozer as well. Boozer's simply not strong enough. There's really no one strong enough to be able to handle him in the post. I mean, we saw what he was able to do against Terrace Reed, who we thought was going to be one of the guys to do it, and Terrace Reed wasn't able to handle him either. So, that's the problem. And now the rest of the guys, the wing guys like Hopkins and Mitchell, they're going to have to step up in this particular game. And Darling, who I spoke to as well, who's a very solid college guard, transfer from Idaho State. They've got some guys off the bench too, like Sannon can shoot. So we'll see. It's a much different makeup of last year team, and apparently it's a much more together team from last year. Remember, Pitino had a bench Lewis down the stretch there because he was shooting like John Starks in Game 7 against Arkansas. So it's a different makeup of a team, tough draw, but I think that St. John's is going to be a problem there in the East. If anyone can take out Duke, to me, it's St. John's in that bracket.
Hey, Matt Zimick, we call you back in because you're a great nostalgia guy like I am. 34 years later, we might have a Sweet 16 of Duke against Rick Pitino. It's not Duke, Kentucky, Krzyzewski, and Pitino in that epic East Regional Final in Philadelphia. Duke is in Philadelphia in the early part of the bracket. We could be looking at a Saturday Sweet 16 game, or I'm sorry, it would be a Thursday Sweet 16 game, I think, the following week, of Duke and Rick Pitino and St. John's. These cosmic coincidences, again, they don't look at the bracket, remember, and set these things up, Matt Zimick.
That's called 10 million. That's called 10 million viewers if that happens on Thursday night.
Stay tuned with the New York market. Matt, what do you think on that? Duke St. John's?
Well, just, I think the part of the larger story here is that Duke's the number one overall seed, but got a tougher draw than the other number one seeds in the bracket. I think that's one takeaway. Circling back to one of the big national stories in this bracket. It's also, I think, the worst thing the committee did. The South Regionals, Sweet 16, Elite 8, are in Houston. Houston is the 2 seed, so Florida gets the short end of the stick, having to play basically a road game in the Elite 8 against Houston if the Cougars are there. And I think I like Houston's path to the Elite 8. Go back 8 years, TJ. San Antonio was the site of the regionals. Houston was the 5 seed. It gets to the Sweet 16 and it knocks off number 1 seed Arizona before losing to Jay Wright and Villanova in San Antonio. So there is a precedent for Houston being a lower seed, but getting home placement in the regionals and taking out the number 1 seed. So that to me is the worst thing the committee did. Like, come on, you shouldn't be giving a lower seed. It's kind of like Ari's point with Miami playing Missouri and St. Louis. You give the higher seed the preferred placement. You know, if you have Florida in the South, Houston has to be the 2 seed. You
somewhere
know,
else.
Ship Houston to the East. Ship Houston to the East. You put UConn and Florida. And Jason, you were saying that you thought UConn and Florida would be 1-2 in some combination. Come on, like that's to me a correctable thing. Like this was not something the committee was locked into. So that's a big thing to know, that Florida Houston would be in Houston.
I want to talk Western basketball with Matt and Ari. I know you got to go in a moment. Jason, did you have something else for Ari before he departs, or are we good on this Sunday night?
We're good. Again, UConn, are they vulnerable here, Ari, in the second round?
Second round,
they would play either UCLA or UCF would be the matchup. And UCLA damage right now. We don't know if Villado can play with the injured knee. We don't know if Dent, the outstanding point guard, can play. Calf injury.
Yeah,
UCF, UCLA looming second round for UConn. What do you think, Ari?
Yeah, I don't. I think they get out of that mix regardless if it's UCF or UCLA. UCF does have a lot of size. And look, you know, I want to take away that game that they really didn't play well and didn't look like they had the energy to play in Madison Square Garden on Saturday night, which was a surprise because they looked pretty good previously in the previous 2 nights. But they haven't been playing the best basketball really down the stretch either. But we know that Dan Hurley can get his teams to turn it on. And I expect them to do that again. He's able to get the team to turn a switch, but they really have to hit their 3-point shots. If they're not hitting their perimeter shots, they're going to put themselves in a tough spot. But I don't think UCLA or UCF really have the personnel to do much to UConn. I think they'll be able to get out of that.
Zimick and Powers love my nostalgia. So does the audience. 20 years ago in Washington, D.C., Ari was courtside, previous work duties for us with Sirius XM Radio when George Mason won the regional, beating who, Ari? UConn. In the East Regional.
The number 1 overall seed.
East Regional back again with Duke and UConn in the East Regional, maybe in the Elite 8. Stay tuned if you know your history 20 years ago. I still remember the George Mason guys were celebrating on the table like right above you, that press row. I was surprised you didn't get up on the table with them. Just start cheering them on.
Exactly. Well, I will say this, though, going back to what Matt was saying about the placement of Houston you have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, the NCAA is also trying to sell tickets. So money is always in it. So, yeah, Florida, you know, they would have. They really didn't have much of a choice but to put Houston in the South and Florida in the South as well.
But by the way, to that point, they're going to sell about 15,000 tickets in Tampa for the game on Friday, whenever the game time is for Florida. To be playing in the opening round. So the Gators can't complain too much, guys. They're playing 90 miles away from their campus in the first 2 games as the number 1 seed.
Right.
Not all bad. And I know you guys know that, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's so but I hear what Matt's saying, but in that case, it just so happens where they're playing the regionals this year, which they put up years in advance. But they got to sell tickets, and just like if UConn makes it, Philadelphia is not too far away, and UConn's got a huge fan base. And Duke, we know travels really well as there as well. Michigan State also can be there, so we know that Sparty is good too with that. so we'll see what happens. But and then obviously if you get St. John's there too, I mean, you get Philadelphia. It's all about selling tickets, and they do those placements for that. And I think that's also why they put Missouri to play in St. Louis against Miami, because we don't travel that particularly well. But Missouri, they know they can sell tickets there for St. Louis for sure, at least for that particular game.
Yep.
So again, that's part of what is put in the mix, even though they won't admit that. But you got to sell these tickets because they're not cheap, and you can make a lot of revenue that way.
No doubt the TV money, though, is bigger. It used to be a bigger deal with the tickets. We know that.
Yeah, but you don't want to get rid of a few nickels here or there. It all adds up.
Ari Russell, great stuff. Thank you. We appreciate
all right,
the
thank
time.
you.
We'll check in with you again down the road. We thank him for hanging out here with us on College Basketball Coast to Coast. Thank you for being patient, Matt Zimick, while we were going back and forth with him being at the Garden. You are kind of our Western Bureau chief. Chime in on some of the matchups. Gonzaga got a 3 seed. They are potentially playing BYU in the West Regional. I thought BYU a little bit overseeded by the committee as a 6 seed with all the losses down the stretch of the season. They thought, Matt, on that potential second-round matchup, all things being equal, they both win. Gonzaga, BYU, any thought?
So if it's Gonzaga, BYU, that's a great draw for the Zags because no Richie Saunders. BYU hasn't really been playing all that well. Like BYU is a 6 seed that's playing like a 9. So if that's the matchup, Gonzaga has to love that one. I would not be shocked if Will Wade and NC State get all the way to the Sweet 16, though. Like the Zags are vulnerable without Braden Huff, and BYU's limited. BYU's not playing full strength. I think that play-in game between Texas and North Carolina State, you could easily see that team, the winner of that game, then winning a couple games, beating BYU, beating Gonzaga. But, as the Western Bureau Chief for college basketball coast to coast, the big story, Arizona, if not now, when? Like that path is all set up. It's the best path of any number 1 seed. Like Arizona, you have to get it done this time. No Final Four since 2001. Like this is the time to finally knock the door down. There are absolutely zero excuses, barring an injury. Like North Carolina was an elite team in 2012, but Kendall Marshall goes down in the second round against Creighton in Greensboro Coliseum. That derailed a bid, in the NCAA tournament. Unless something like that happens, and obviously we hope not, zero excuse for Tommy Lloyd in Arizona. You have to get to the Final Four this season.
Matt, how dangerous is this Santa Clara team against Kentucky?
Here's a fun fact. Herb Sendek from the Rick Pitino coaching tree going against Kentucky. Nice little storyline there. And so Santa Clara under Sendek has lived in the shadows of not only the Zags and St. Mary's, but usually San Francisco was kind of the third team. In other years, you might have seen another like a fourth team crop up. Obviously, BYU was in the West Coast Conference for a little bit. Santa Clara was that 5th or 6th team in the shadows that could never get over the hump, that could never really even get into the top tier of the WCC. But that win over St. Mary's locked in the WCC semifinals, locked Santa Clara into the field. And the way Kentucky's playing, like there's no way anyone should be confident about the outcome of this game.
And forgive me
this is a coin flip.
On my brain, where is that game, that 7-10 game in the Midwest bracket?
I didn't locate it.
Jason, where is that game? Let's find it if you can on Santa Clara and Kentucky. It's in the Midwest bracket. The winner would theoretically get Iowa State.
St. Louis. It is St. Louis.
So it's not like there would be a partisan crowd in maybe Portland or San Diego in the West for Santa Clara. They both have to travel to get there.
St. Louis.
And we'll see on that. While we have you here, Jason and I just saw Utah State wrap up the Mountain West Conference championship. They won the regular season. They won the conference tournament. Jason, say a little bit about seeing Utah State, and they're in the 8-9 game with Villanova, and then they're in there with Arkansas. And then, Matt, I want your thought on the Aggies of Utah State, Jared Calhoun's team, with a lot of talented players and some size. Go ahead, Jason, first.
I did. I was impressed with what I saw. They had a good little point guard, Drake Allen. They had Mouselev, who was the player of the year in the Mountain West. Well coached. They played very well defensively. I know San Diego State's not a great offensive team, but they were able to get some stops on defense. I think they're going to give Villanova all they want in that first round game. I like Utah State from
the guard MJ Collins made a couple of big threes. One of their best scores under his dunk. Powers and I both came unglued, Matt Zemek, on the huge dunk in the Thomas and Mack Center in Vegas as they beat San Diego State. So let's see if Utah State can be in the path of Arizona. Arizona's still going to be favored to win that game. Do you have any thought on the one Mountain West team? We wondered, would it only be one Mountain West team? And it turns out it was. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wrong about a lot of things a lot of the time, but I've been telling you all season long that if Utah State got the double, the regular season championship and the tournament championship, there was a good chance the Mountain West was going to be a one-bid league, and it's exactly how it played out. And, with San Diego State beating New Mexico, New Mexico was closer to the cut line than San Diego State. So as soon as that happened, San Diego State needed to beat Utah State to give the Mountain West a second team. That was pretty clear. So called that one right the whole way, so accurately gauged that one. And so I would just simply catapult from that point into this point. This was a bad Mountain West this season. So I'm not going to trust Utah State in a battleground type game.
All right.
Again, this is not obviously a great Villanova team, but the burden is on Utah State to say, hey, you won a bad league. You now need to prove it against a not spectacular, but a decent Big East team with a proven, seasoned head coach, Kevin Willard. The burden is on Utah State in that game.
Hey.
Not to say Utah State can't or won't win.
Right.
The burden of proof, right? The benefit of the doubt is not on Utah State's side. That much is clear.
You write the UCLA Bruins wire as well for the USA Today website. Bruins got a couple of wins in the Big Ten tournament, but they have real injury question marks for this UCF game. And I think those are concerns. You've been digging in on that with your staff over the last 24 hours or so. Bilodeau didn't play at all in the Purdue semifinal game. Donovan didn't play in the second half. It's a real injury question mark for UCLA out west, right? For this UCF game, winner to maybe get UConn.
Yeah, Bilodeau's been their best player the whole season. Now, Donovan Dent's been their best player the past 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Just, putting up ridiculous production numbers with virtually 0 turnovers. He's been the best guard in college basketball over the past 3 weeks after largely failing to live up to the hype through early February. But the bottom line is this, at UCLA, you're not supposed to be getting 7 seeds. UCLA was a 7 last year, gets shipped to Lexington, plays a really good 2 seed. Tennessee gets blown out of the water. So it's trending that same direction. Okay, might beat UCF in what is basically a coin flip game. I have no idea who wins that one. But at UCLA, you don't play for winning a round of 64.
But isn't it fair? Can I interject? Isn't it fair? They were dead in the water. In the first half of that Illinois game, it looked like Mick Cronin might have his for sale sign in his yard the next morning at Pauley Pavilion. They come back. They win that game. They pull off another win late in the year. I'm trying to remember who that was against. They then come to the tournament and beat Michigan State on the neutral floor. They're not only in the tournament, they're safely in the tournament. And if they win an opening round game, I know it's not the John Wooden standard, but that's got to be considered at least on some level, some success from where they were in mid-February. Yes?
Absolutely. Like Cronin has definitely salvaged the season to an extent.
Yes.
Hey, Cincinnati job is open. There's going to be speculation there. That UCLA fans would love Mick Cronin to seek new opportunities. That still holds. But the fact that UCLA didn't, backdoor into the first 4 or get in as an 11 seed, that does matter. Being a 7 seed and then potentially winning a first round game, given all the givens where this team was a month and a half ago, yes, that definitely matters. And just in terms of shaping the landscape for next season. People can say, all right, this season didn't go well, but let's give it one more go around and see how it all ends up. This feels very different from being an 11 seed, being right on the bubble cut line to Selection Sunday. So yes, Mick Cronin and his players really did rally around the flag. But big picture, this is still falling short. This is not the Jaime Jaquez, Tiger Campbell teams where they were regularly top 4 seeds. They got to the Sweet 16 annually. That's the UCLA standard, and we haven't seen that the past 3 seasons. So unless they're able to upset UConn and get to the Sweet 16, this is still big picture a failure. The last 6 weeks have been a success, but the big picture is still a failure in Westwood. Let's be
Jason,
clear.
Anything else from Matt Zimick before he's out of here?
And I'm being partially facetious, but I'm being all serious about this too. I don't want to hear Mick Cronin say a word about the travel. Don't say a word about having to go to Philadelphia. Honestly, go play the game.
Because he's complained all year long about the travel, is what we're referring to.
Yeah.
You knew what you were getting into when your school elected to go into the Big Ten, and all the other teams besides USC, Oregon, and Washington are in the Central and Eastern time zone. So you knew what you were getting into with that. So now they do almost kind of comedy that they put them in Philadelphia to play that game with UCF. A thought on that, on the comedic value of that, Matt Zimick, on the 10-7 game in Philadelphia for UCLA?
Well, in terms of the Mick Cronin scheduling comment, one thing that happened to UCLA, this is not to defend Mick Cronin, but this is to explain what he was saying. A number of times, this happened multiple times in the Big Ten schedule, UCLA would play a road game on the weekend while USC hosted a team that would then stay in Los Angeles into the Tuesday or midweek game.
Right.
That happened multiple times. So UCLA would be playing a home game, but against an opponent which had more rest because it was staying in Los Angeles while UCLA had to fly from the East Coast to
very
LA.
valid point. Valid point.
And so you don't have that dynamic in the NCAA tournament. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Mick Cronin did not complain about being shipped to Lexington, Kentucky as the 7 seed last year. It's just not at the same dynamic. So it's a very particular thing about Big Ten scheduling. I don't think Mick Cronin is going to say one word about being shipped to an Eastern location here.
Anything else? We got to let you go, and we got to wrap this up. Anything else that we've left out, Matt Zimick, tonight? Are we good?
Well, just big picture. Just big picture. Last year, it felt like a chalky bracket, and it turned out we got 4 number 1 seeds for just the second time in the history of the NCAA tournament since seeding began in 1979. Will we see a similar level of chalk? I am inclined to say yes. I think this is still a tournament for the big dogs.
I would put it at like an 80% chance we get all 4 of them in the Elite 8, that they're going to win 3 games. We're talking about Duke, Michigan, Arizona, Florida. I'd put it about a 4 out of 5 chance they're all going to win 3 games. Do you think it's that high?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes, I would say so. In previous NCAA tournaments, and of course, every selection Sunday, we kind of you give your first look at the bracket. You have your first gut reactions. Maybe they'll feel different 24 hours from now after you sleep on these matchups. But yeah, do you see a 4 seed or a 5 seed now that team is a real threat? I don't see many. I think Wisconsin, here's the thought. Wisconsin has regularly gotten in Arizona's way of the Final Four. 2014, 2015, the Decker and Kaminsky teams, that's been a recurring theme. Maybe Wisconsin. Wisconsin strikes me as a team that can get really hot from 3, maybe cause some problems. But for the most part, the 4s and the 5s are not that daunting. Just not the same way that you would feel or think in other brackets when you unveil them.
For example,
Sunday.
We'll audibly give it.
We're going to see all 4 number 1 seeds in the Elite 8. I would say yes.
And we'll give it audibly. Arizona would theoretically play Arkansas or Wisconsin as the 4-5. Michigan would theoretically play Alabama or Texas Tech in the 4-5. Duke would play either Kansas or St. John's in the 4-5. And Florida would play either Nebraska or Vanderbilt in the 4-5. To your point, St. John's, yes. Arkansas, yes. But the rest of that,
maybe Vandy,
Vandy, who played well in the SEC tournament. That's a rematch though against Florida. Matt, go ahead.
After losing to Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament, if that's the Sweet 16, Florida's going to be totally ready. You mentioned Nebraska, so I'm sure 99% of your viewers know this, but let's just mention it. Nebraska, the only power conference team to have never won an NCAA tournament game. Danny Nee and his number 3 seeded Huskers lost to Pete Gillen and 14th seeded Xavier in 1991 in Minneapolis. 35 years later, still waiting for that first Nebraska ball NCAA tournament win. If not now, when against the
and Troy
is pretty good
out of the Sun Belt. Jason Powers in their way with Scott Cross, back-to-back Sun Belt championships. That's a fascinating
dangerous
13
game
versus 4 with Nebraska taking their lumps at the end of the Big Ten schedule. They were beaten repeatedly in the Big Ten schedule, including the opening round. Matt Zimick, read him at UCLA Bruins Wire, USA Today website, the USC Trojans Wire as well, our Western Bureau Chief. Promise me that we can chat again as all of this is unfolding when the games actually get going here on college basketball coast to coast. We love your insight on Selection Sunday night. Thank you, my friend.
Always a pleasure to do this on Selection Sunday. It's like it's Christmas for all of us.
It is, and you did great. Thank you, Matt Zimick. We'll see you later. Jason Powers, final few moments for you and I. Let's go back to something that we have brought up here in our market. Brian Hodgson and the South Florida Bulls. I will go ahead and put the hat up here. Mrs. Rives' Bulls have won the American Conference Tournament on Sunday afternoon. They are back in the big dance for the first time since 2012 under Stan Heath. What was that? Gus Gilchrist and the 2012 Bulls won a first 4 game and then won an opening round game as well with Temple. Got to the round of 32. USF only in the tournament for the 4th time ever. Hodgson's team can shoot it. Wes Enos, outstanding shooting guard, played well in the American Conference Tournament. Big man Isaiah Nelson. Bulls and Louisville, as we touched on earlier, but for those just joining us live, a thought on that 6-11 game and the game in Buffalo, New York, actually, where Hodgson's from, and the rumors swirling, Jason, that he could be the Syracuse coach.
No doubt. The status of Mikael Brown for Louisville, big in this game. They're a sensational freshman, can score a ton of points. Louisville's had been up and down this year. They've got good players, but they've not been able to put it together. And Mikael Brown's been in and out of the lineup the last month or so. So what is his health status? I would favor Louisville slightly in the game, but USF's very dangerous, especially Isaiah Nelson, player of the year, defensive player of the year. You mentioned Wes Enos. They play an Alabama kind of tempo, but they're a little tougher on the defensive end than I think Alabama is at times.
It's interesting that for South Florida out of Tampa here, to full disclosure, I did the games on the radio for 10 years, and shout out to the 28-year veteran on the radio, Jim Lighthall, who gets to call an NCAA tournament game for the Bulls. He called the conference tournament championship win in Birmingham on Sunday. Go get him, Jim. Go get him, Joey Johnston on the radio call. We know those guys, Jason, here in our market. It is interesting that Louisville was a former conference opponent with USF in the Metro Conference in the 1990s. Later, the Conference USA opponent when they switched to Conference USA and the Metro folded up. Yep. Also, Big East and the newly expanded because of football Big East. Louisville and USF, South Florida were in the same conference. And briefly, they went to the American together for a couple of years until Louisville went to the ACC. So there's a lot of familiarity with the programs. It doesn't mean anything for Pat Kelsey, his players, Brian Hodgson, first-year coach, his players. But that's fascinating that the Bulls and Louisville have known about each other for the better part of 35 or 40 years in conference play. Just for what it's worth.
I feel bad for the USF fans a little bit that the game's in Buffalo because that's going to be tough to get to for the USF fans and the alumni. But it is what it is, and hopefully they'll have some people up in Buffalo. And if you win that game, you potentially are going to see Michigan State in round 2. So there's always a darling, TJ Rives. Can USF be that darling?
Stay tuned. Who is it out of these 12s, out of these 5s? Akron's in a 12-5 game with Texas Tech, who's damaged. Be careful in these 12-5 games. I'm just looking over a couple other ones. McNeese is in the 12-5 game again with Vanderbilt. They beat Clemson a year ago as a 12 seed out of the Southland Conference.
The other 12, the ball. High Point can score a bunch of points.
Yeah, High Point, Wisconsin. But we saw Wisconsin when you and I were out in Vegas watching Wisconsin over and over again in the Big 12 in the Big 10 tournament with Blackwell and Nick Boyd, the FAU transfer.
An Australian kid who made a bunch of threes.
The Badgers. That's a fascinating game with Arkansas if they both get there in the second round.
Right.
And the game would be in Portland, Wisconsin and Arkansas in Portland. Are you kidding me? The other 12-5 game as well as Northern Iowa and St. John's. I don't know what we think about that game as well with St. John's off the Big East win. Northern Iowa will have not played in about 11 days after winning the Missouri Valley, and they do not match up from a physical standpoint. They don't match up with St. John's. Then again, St. John's guard play is not tremendous either. Be careful in the 5. And St. John's probably underseeded here. I know they look at the total body of work, but winning the regular season in the conference that had UConn in it, destroying Villanova late in the year, beating UConn decisively in the championship game, maybe deserved better than a 5 seed. Did the committee get that wrong, Jason Powers?
Think that if Virginia's the 3 seed, St. John's can't be a 5 seed. That'd be my only beef. I mean, Virginia's a good team. We saw Virginia play Duke pretty good last night. They've had a good year. But I think neutral court, most people would take St. John's over Virginia.
St. John's resume, I know I'm audibly throwing this out. They are 15 in the net, which would indicate they should be a top 4 seed. 21 strength of schedule, 5 quad 1 wins, had 1 bad quad 3 loss. Non-conference schedule was 33. Really good non-con, playing the likes of Iowa State and Auburn and Baylor and Ole Miss and Kentucky and Alabama. Now, they didn't win a bunch of those, but they at least played people. The Virginia resume, again, keep in mind, as I said, St. John's 15 in the net, 21 strength of schedule, 5 quad 1 wins. For Arizona for Virginia on the final resume, they got to that ACC tournament championship game. They finished 12 in the net, 246 in the non-con. Did you hear me say 246, not 35 like St. John's? They did have 8 quad 1 wins. That's what helped them. They won a bunch of games over the likes of North Carolina. Later in the year, they beat Ohio State on a neutral floor. That turned out to be important. They beat Miami, who's in the field as a higher seed. And they also beat NC State, who was pretty good, but in the field in the tournament, and then beat Miami again on the neutral floor. So I guess that's what popped them up. 8 quad 1 wins on that.
I think I might have cashed a ticket on Virginia in Vegas, I believe.
I think you might have on that. Anything else that we have left out here tonight? I think we're good on a selection Sunday night.
Get some sleep, TJ Rives.
We got to. We were in Vegas one more time. Did we have some recency bias with Utah State, or how dangerous are they against Villanova? And then they would be in the way of Arizona in the upcoming matchup with the 1 seed, the 8-9 game to be played before Arizona. 99% is playing them.
That fan base is going to bring some people because they're playing out west. There will be a lot of Aggie people in that building for that Villanova.
The Herd is the student section, their version of the Cameron Crazies. We were around the Herd. We put a picture up on social media. All the students have the jerseys on, the headbands, the sunglasses, a wild group.
And the adults, too. The adults came out in full force.
Utah State has guards. They could give Arizona some problems. Arizona's so deep, so strong. Yeah. But you got to get by Villanova first.
Yeah.
And Villanova has a key injury also. And let's see what happens. UConn hammered them in the Big East semifinal game.
How about I won't say the team name. How about the nugget we heard that a prominent team charters only a couple times a year? They're flying Southwest Airlines. A majority of their trips on their road trip.
Some of these programs.
I'm not going to say the team.
Some of these programs, especially at the mid-major level, do not have the budget to be able to do all of this. And so that's one of the challenges in terms of scheduling, et cetera. And that's why a lot of these programs will go play buy games, 2 or 3 of them, and get some extra budget money to be able to do charter aircraft.
I was surprised when we heard
that kind of thing. That is kind of interesting. I believe we are good on this Sunday night. We get ready for the first 4. Again, the at-large teams in the first 4 are Texas, NC State, and the fascinating Miami of Ohio game with SMU, which lost some games down the stretch. I still come back to what we've said a couple of times tonight. Keith Gill, the commissioner of the Sun Belt, the head of the selection committee, said Miami was not only in, they were all the way in front of Texas, SMU, and NC State at large. Fascinating. You never know for sure what the committee is thinking. Most of the bracketologists did not have NC State in the first 4, yet there they are for the first 4. A lot of them had Santa Clara in the first 4. They're not in the first 4. They were safely in, as it turns out.
Very
We
good.
love all of this. Are we ready for some hoops later on in the week on college basketball coast to coast?
48 hours, we'll have 2 games.
We got games. We got games coming in Dayton Tuesday night, Wednesday night. First and second round in Tampa for us. Tyler Jones will be in Oklahoma City first and second round. We'll go to some different people at some different sites in the opening round and in the Sweet 16 Elite 8 round, and it all culminates with the Final Four in Indianapolis. Jason Powers, great job working with me last week. By the way, we did not mention Wright State got in as a 14 seed in this tournament. Wright State to play Virginia out of the Horizon League, 14 versus 3 game. Wright State, fascinating.
Kellen Pickett, the big man, the freshman big man.
Pickett, the big man. Birch, the outstanding guard. Any other thought on that? Is that a potential pitfall for Virginia, or Virginia just too strong with the 3-point shooting? DeRitter, the leading scorer?
I would think Virginia would have the advantage, but again, we saw Wright State, again, come from way behind, came from double digits down to come back and win the game. Kellen Pickett, 6'8", 6'9", freshman center, can run, block some shots, make some shots. So keep an eye on Wright State.
Oakland University 2 years ago, Greg Campy's team with Golke, the 3-point shooter, Trey Townsend down low, beat Kentucky in a 14 versus 3 game.
Yep.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned on Wright State and Virginia. Great job, my friend, with all the coverage and with what we're doing tonight. Thanks also to Tyler Jones and Deshaun Tate, as well as Ari Russell and Matt Zimick being with us. Whether you found us here on YouTube, make sure that you're following, subscribing here on YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on the CBB Coast to Coast Twitter handle with the number 2, CBB Coast, the number 2 Coast. For that, find us on podcast, Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, the TuneIn streaming channel, College Basketball Coast to Coast, where we had the live broadcast. We've got all the content here, preview mode, recap mode for all the games. Jason, great stuff. And thank you to the audience for also hanging with us. Have a good night. We have the field of 64. The games are next. And you've been with us on College Basketball Coast to Coast.